Taxes are crucial because governments collect this money and use it to finance social projects. Without taxes, government contributions to critical sectors of the economy would be impossible. This is even more important when it comes to funding education at the tertiary level in Nigeria. Education is one of the most deserving recipients of tax money. Governments put a lot of importance in development of human capital, and education is central in this development. Money from taxes is channeled to funding, furnishing, and maintaining the public education system. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund has made a marked difference to Nigeria's public universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. Over the years, much so that it has become essential to recognize and honor selected taxpayers that have contributed positively and consistently to education tax. Tetfund recently hosted the 3rd edition of the Taxpayers Forum to showcase intervention activities, transparency, and accountability in the management of public funds, and to create an avenue for formal interaction with taxpayers and other relevant stakeholders. The next edition of The Paradigm Shift will spotlight this grand event, bringing details of the strides that Tetfund has made over the years since inception. But before that, it is crucial to take a look at the journey so far for government's top tertiary education intervention agency.
Tetfund, an intervention agency of the federal government of Nigeria. It was set up for the primary purpose of overseeing vital projects and manpower to bolster and render supplementary funding support for the education sector in the country at all levels. Established by an act of law, it's a major holding pillar for tertiary education in the country. The story of what today is Tetfund began with the concerns, particularly by the Academic Staff Union of Universities in the country, over serious shortcomings in funding, physical infrastructure, and program content, as well as critical manpower in higher education in Nigeria, leading to the setting up of the Gray-Longe Commission, which in turn recommended higher education funding through earmarked tax borne by registered companies. This decision gave birth to the Education Tax Act No. 7 of 1993, by which the then military regime decreed the fund's interventions should cover all levels of education in the country. Thus began a homegrown strategy for a solution to address the funding gaps considered as major impediment exacerbating the shortcomings of higher education in the country. Through its different phases of evolution and development, first as Education Tax Fund in 1993, later Education Trust Fund in 1998, to its present status, Tertiary Education Trust Fund since 2011, which limited the fund's interventions to tertiary education institutions, being the original recommendation by ASU for more impact. The body has reformed and repositioned for better and more coordinated mandate delivery. Whereas Tetfund is not a replacement for statutory budgetary appropriation, it has played a key interventionist role in the core areas of rehabilitation, restoration, and consolidation of tertiary education in Nigeria. Through its main available revenue inflow, which is 2% education tax from assessable profits of all registered companies in Nigeria, Tetfund has ensured diligent disbursements for the general improvements of tertiary education in the federal and state institutions in Nigeria. The Board of Trustees of Tetfund is comprised of the chairman and 6 members drawn from the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria, as well as representation by the heads of the Federal Ministry of Education, Finance, regulatory agencies of tertiary institutions, namely the National Universities Commission, the National Board for Technical Education, and the National Commission for Colleges of Education. The Federal Inland Revenue Board is the agency saddled by law with the responsibility of collecting the 2% tax on behalf of Tetfund. The Executive Secretary is the Secretary of the Board, as well as the Chief Executive and Chief Accounting Officer of the fund. The board, through the Tetfund management, ensures education tax collections, administers and disburses such tax collections for approved interventions in universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, in addition to other federal special interventions. In April 2014, former President Goodluck Jonathan appointed Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro as the Executive Secretary of Tetfund. This choice would prove to be a significant moment in the history of Tetfund, as it signaled the birth of a paradigm shift for the agency. Professor Bogoro, an agriculturist, innovator, and seasoned administrator, led Tetfund in the first instance from 2014 to 2016, in which time he fought uncompromisingly against entrenched excesses. This led to an attempt to scuttle his work when the system couldn't cope with his scrupulous stance. He received vindication 3 years later via a reinstatement by President Muhammadu Buhari in January 2019. His return was greeted with tumultuous applause from Tetfund staff and backed by the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu. He began the implementation of an elaborate strategy to institutionalize research and development in Nigeria's tertiary institutions. Without lifting his foot from the throttle of infrastructure interventions, Professor Bogoro restarted his mission to make Tetfund a dynamic facilitator for translating research into innovations and strategies for policy and national economic development by creating the agency's pioneer Department of Research and Development Centers of Excellence. It is noteworthy that over time, the various interventions by Tetfund have been well articulated, thorough, and based on carefully structured benchmark or guidelines, as well as needs-driven. Specifically, it has made indelible imprints in the essential areas of the provision or maintenance of critical infrastructure and facilities for teaching and learning. Tetfund has equally been a strong force in assuring availability of institutional materials and equipment, research and publications, as well as continuous academic staff training and development to maintain and improve standards in higher educational institutions in the country. The determination of admissible projects submitted by beneficiary institutions is in line with the policy direction of the Board of Trustees and in compliance with due process. Thus far, the various interventions of Tetfund in universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education have been of tremendous impact and indeed phenomenal. There's hardly any public tertiary educational institution in the three categories that have not felt the positive touch of Tetfund infrastructure intervention. These interventions cut across physical infrastructure, program upgrades, equipment fabrication, project maintenance, and enterprise development. Some of the Tetfund interventions are specially designated as complementary, as may be directed by the President or identified by the Board of Trustees. Such are targeted at correcting noticed imbalances or deficiencies in critical areas and delivered to institutions across the nation's 6 geopolitical zones, tailor-made to address identified peculiarities. Some of these interventions are classified as Special High Impact Intervention (SHIP), while others include take-off grants to newly established federal institutions, disaster recovery, or some other forms of designated special projects. Tetfund also operates through its Education Support Services Department to provide special interventions. There are 3 divisions in the department structured along current activities being handled by the department. They are Library Development Division. This intervention is designed to ensure availability of learning resources in public tertiary educational institutions by providing books, journals, periodicals, and e-resources in line with global trends and equipment, for which funds are allocated on an annual basis. Academic Manuscript to Book Division, aimed at resuscitating, supporting, and encouraging authorship of relevant indigenous academic textbooks for teaching and learning in Nigeria's public tertiary institutions, and the Technical Advisory Group activities on higher education book development to facilitate the implementation of higher education book development program. When it comes to elevating the content component of public tertiary education institutions, in particular the quality of the faculty, Tetfund remains unequaled. The agency has spared no expense, investing over 162 billion naira to sponsor academic staff in pursuit of higher degrees and other qualifications both within and outside the country. Since the inception of Tetfund up to July 2021, 3,286 university academic staff members have received PhDs, 1,262 have received masters, 7 received postdoc, and 624 bench work from international institutions with Tetfund scholarships. An additional 3,972 PhDs and 1,641 masters were earned from Tetfund scholarships to institutions within the country, making up a total of 10,791 academic staff members who are more educated and qualified as a result of Tetfund intervention. The story is no different at polytechnics, with 905 PhDs, 1,417 masters, and 103 for bench work gained from foreign institutions, in addition to 2,822 PhDs and 3,858 masters from local institutions, for a total of 9,105 academic staff trained. From colleges of education, 689 staff members have gained PhDs from foreign institutions, along with 798 who received their masters and 65 bench work. 4,771 academic staff members have received PhDs and 5,006 have received masters from Nigerian institutions, making it a total of 11,329 academic staff of colleges of education who have benefited from Tetfund sponsorship. Thanks to Tetfund, a total of 17,222 academic staff and 4,462 non-academic staff members have attended conferences outside Nigeria. Among the academic staff sponsored to attend international conferences, 9,369 were drawn from universities, 3,730 from polytechnics, while 4,123 came from colleges of education. Those from the non-academic staff cadre numbered 2,184 from universities, 1,302 from polytechnics, and 976 from colleges of education. Conference attendance within Nigeria was also sponsored by Tetfund, with a total of 4,358 academic staff benefiting from universities since inception, 4,766 from polytechnics, and 8,867 from colleges of education. Non-academic staff who attended local conferences courtesy Tetfund numbered 11,941, 7,272 and 9,692 from universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education respectively. In total, since inception up till July 2021, Tetfund has facilitated attendance to a whopping 68,580 conferences at a total cost of nearly 34 billion naira. Within the context of Tetfund's mandate, the agency galvanized the content development and teaching of new knowledge required in the 21st century. Tetfund is implementing a paradigm shift, which began in 2015 at a time when its interventions in the critical physical infrastructure needs of the public tertiary institutions in Nigeria reached a critical threshold. The rationale for the shift was drawn from some crucial components of President Muhammadu Buhari's Executive Order No. 5 to attain a greater Nigeria. The Department of Research and Development Centers of Excellence presently manages the biggest research fund portfolio in the country within the framework of the National Research Fund. NRF funding has increased from an initial 3 billion naira to 7 billion naira in 2020, increasing the number of beneficiaries by 56% year-on-year basis from 2019 to 2020. In effect, 50% increase in funding has resulted in 56% increment in value. The response of Tetfund targeted COVID-19 at a time when it brought the global economy to a standstill. Palliatives were donated by Tetfund to help cushion the sudden effects of the pandemic in different communities across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. 6 research and development efforts were aimed at drug discovery and development of candidate therapeutic treatments, diagnostic tools, ventilators, and repurposing of drugs to fight COVID-19. President Muhammadu Buhari approves the provision of an initial 12 molecular science laboratories, 2 per geopolitical zones, with capacity for testing and diagnostics of COVID-19, Lassa fever, and other related viral diseases. In addition to the initial 12 molecular labs that Tetfund funded in universities, colleges of medicine, and teaching hospitals, 2 more were approved at the Ondo State University of Medical Sciences and in Gombe State respectively. Beneficiary Institutions: Bayero University Kano, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua University Katsina, University of Jos, University of Ilorin Kwara, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University Bauchi, Taraba State University, Nnamdi Azikiwe University Awka, Abia State University, University of Ibadan. Tetfund was also authorized by the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, to provide funding for 6 COVID-19 related special research grants. The joint grants were competed for and won on merit by the following institutions: National Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, University of Ibadan, Usman Mfodio University, University of Jos, Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Kaduna State Polytechnic, UNILAG, and the Nigerian Academy of Science. Tetfund has responded to the recalcitrant national security challenges of Nigeria by engaging the armed forces. Through the Defense Research and Development Bureau, as well as other institutions, Tetfund has invested in problem-solving and developing new technologies like unmanned aerial vehicles to combat terrorism. In December 2020, Tetfund achieved the establishment of the first ever 12 new centers of excellence, 2 in each geopolitical zones. Mobilized with the sum of 1 billion naira each, they have since hit the ground running in line with global standards. The Tetfund Research and Development Standing Committee was inaugurated in September 2020 with a think tank of 165 Nigerian experts drawn from government, the academia, and industry. They were divided into 13 thematic groups based on the priority sectors of the economy to stimulate catalytic responses to our national challenges. The strategic focus of the RDSC includes to facilitate the institutionalization of R&D in Nigeria in all spheres of national life, improved ranking of Nigeria's tertiary institutions, promote global competitiveness of Nigeria's products and services through value addition and capacity strengthening for skills in the development and management of knowledge economy. With 36 reports all set to be implemented, Tetfund is working through a drafting committee on a draft bill to be presented by the President to the National Assembly for the establishment of the National Research and Development Foundation. Such is the commitment of Tetfund to research and development. The Science Granting Council's initiative in Sub-Saharan Africa has announced that Tetfund has joined the initiative to advance research excellence in Sub-Saharan Africa. Since 2015, SGCI has been jointly funded by the United Kingdom's Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, Canada's International Development Research Centre, South Africa's National Research Foundation, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, and the German Research Foundation. The Executive Secretary of Tetfund says the SGCI will open a new window of opportunity that will serve as a fulcrum in achieving our goal: Nigeria's transition to a knowledge economy in the 21st century. Overall, the Tetfund interventions in Nigeria's public tertiary institutions have been resourceful and a welcome relief to many, consolidating on existing arrangements or filling the gaps and deficits in critical areas in these institutions. Tetfund holds these interventions dearly, consistent with its mandate and in furtherance of the nation's broad policy to ensure upbeat standards that can position tertiary educational institutions to deliver required outputs for national growth and development. The commitment, energy, and resources put into these Tetfund interventions on infrastructure for higher institutions of learning in Nigeria have indeed been well worth it. Therefore, the plan to sustain and consolidate on the gains achieved remains a core strategic consideration of Tetfund management. Indeed, Tetfund, with the support of the Buhari-led federal government and the Federal Ministry of Education under the supervision of its minister, Malam Adamu, has set the pace for making Nigeria globally competitive through its institutionalization of research and development initiative.
This has been the experience of Tetfund thus far. But the story continues. On the next episode of The Paradigm Shift, we hear from the Executive Secretary of Tetfund, Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, who will give us an insight into key interventions that have set tertiary education in Nigeria on a new course of progress.
We have always tried to seek ways in which we express our appreciation to the Nigerian people in general and taxpayers in particular for their patriotism and sacrifice in supporting us and in the payment of education tax respectively. The Taxpayers Forum has always served as a platform to honor and identify individuals and companies that have made tremendous contribution to education through the consistent payment of education tax and have invariably contributed to the development of education and by extension that of the entire nation.
We will also hear from the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, the Chairman of Tetfund's Board of Trustees, Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim Imam, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, Professor Oluwatoyin Ogundipe, and a special address from the Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Tetfund continues its journey to champion the establishment of a National Research and Development Foundation for Nigeria, to institutionalize the triple helix model for alliance of the academic, private sector, and the government, to improve the ranking of Nigeria's tertiary institutions, and to facilitate the buy-in of all stakeholders and especially beneficiary institutions to the ideals of transparency, accountability, and the promotion of high standards. And that is the paradigm shift.